that's just a point that I want to make, and I really hope that all of the panelists can somehow touch upon this issue in their presentations. With that, I think I'm going to move on to the next panelist. So I would like to request Mr. Shahid Farooq to continue with his presentation.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, my presentation in technology, governance, and how they contribute towards achievement for transparency and accountability. And definitely, we look at sustainable development. At this moment, Sustainable Development Goals Agenda 2030, we have very compact set of proposal and suggestions we should be following to achieve this sustainable development by 2030. And I think the heart of SDGs is SDG 16. SDG 16 is about governance. It's a common misconception that SDGs would be achieved only with huge resources, trillions of dollars we would be requiring. But recently we found that there were huge environmental issues in Lahore. And the question is, do we need funds to cover this? No. We only need to improve governance to check these carbon dioxide emissions and these environmental issues. So when we go around all the sustainable development goals, governance play a vital role. And in SDG 616, there's 16.6 target is developing effective, accountable, and transparent institutions and government. So when we say that governance is important to achieve SDGs, ICT is information and communication technology, is basically a catalyst that gives strong strength and accelerates good governance, and definitely good governance will be contributing towards achieving SDGs. It was about only e-government, purely using information and communication technology to digitize the parliamentary government, where some attempts were made to transform the government processes. Going beyond digitization, there was sort of sense of digitalization. It's very inclusive sort of idea. Technology, again, is catalyst here. Lately, Aftab Sir has given a very realistic picture where we stand, what we are doing. E-government communication is very simple, social media is simple, and mobile contents are simple. Expensive solutions. But to what extent we are digitalization, then digitalization. We computerized everything. We have this whole survey for United Nations. Second is citizen engagement and e-participation in governments or federal government. Alhamdulillah, we claim that we have developed one citizen feedback model program where you will receive improvements in governance. Have we used this information for policy by proactive on the basis of feedback from this analysis from this complaint repository? We can improve our governance, and that could reduce the level of magnitude of that complaints. And social media and web channels, government agencies are very commonly using. You will find social media, Twitter and Facebook account of almost every government agency. But we are not using this social media for some serious. We are not using less expensive. We don't need artificial intelligence. We don't need that blockchain sort of things for this. People in the public sector started working on this. And another interesting thing is about our right to information. When Right to Information Act was passed in 2013 like this. Okay. Actually, I've been a focal person for Open Government Partnership in Punjab, and I also contributed in this draft National Action Plan. So what I think for citizen-centric government through participation of open government, the principles of open government is a universal principle. Without political will, in countries like Pakistan and our subcontinent, and even some African countries that have been colonies, there are still, we can find a button-down approach. We will still find that big desks just invisible. And civil society and citizens' capability regarding governance matters. Most of the time, civil society is limited, and that independently in absence of these core agents. So another thing is that as far as technology is concerned, we have a huge lot of public officials who have limited knowledge and limited interest in ICTs. What happens then? Wherever some ICT component in any project, we just transfer it to our IT agencies. And unfortunately, IT agencies, most of the people don't know the complexities of the public administration, the citizens' aspirations. So we invest on IT, Bengali has expressed digital divide is there. One component, so our policy should be about bringing transparency and citizen participation. We would have to.
But how to practice it? Law is there, but if it is not enforced, it's just like any other law that the lady, I have forgotten the name, who was in the jail for 18 years without any crime. It is same. If you do not have the infrastructure in place, then these laws are useless. When we talk about knowledge ecology, yes, individuals, organizations, community, then in management research, the wicked problems that current rationality, the current existing rationality has failed to cope up with those problems. The solution may be the design thinking, yes, design thinking, but for design thinking you need trained professionals, dedicated professionals, who do not go for any rewards, especially when we talk about social entrepreneurship. We need those design thinkers who can actually make a difference, who are willing to make a difference, and those people are there. But are their efforts incorporated by the government? Is their voice strong enough that the common people, they get to know the information they have produced, that information is then used to cater for the NATO or the big powers. They are taking abroad, creating the sense that some aliens are going to attack and there will be some force in New York that will be, fighting that alien. They created the narrative to make their youth realize that talk about your own local problems. Don't put too much thinking into your global problems. Global problems, the CIA and the other agencies, they will be taking care of. Then the second thing is the penetration of Indian music and the Indian cinema. They have transcended into or that tier. Through entertainment industry, they are creating the awareness for every, age group. How have we responded? Digital is too broad, too broad, and we need to understand that this is spreading too fast. The youth is becoming too pessimist. They are becoming too the degree of
some ideas about, together with my distinguished panelists, some ideas about how new digital technology are transforming governance system, and therefore also system that relates to accountability, public service delivery, etc. And also how, in a sense, government have to prepare for and change to adapt to these new technologies. So let me start first from the fourth industrial revolution, so the big picture, and then we zoom in more on issues and examples from government. So this is really a revolution, and as mentioned by Klaus Schwab, who is the founder of the World Economic Forum, it is a revolution because it represents the confluence of technological breakthrough covering a wide range of areas and fields at the same time. That's one element of this revolution. And these fields, they range from artificial intelligence, robotics, Internet of Things, nanotechnology, new source of energy, etc. And they are, in my opinion, they are challenging government system because these changes, which will impact wide areas or elements of the economy and the society in a country, are happening at a very rapid pace, which challenge the decision-making pace that government.
To address this, but I was going to conclude. So I have written your question, and so we can ask panelists, and then
Any more questions?
panel. Every panelist is an expert on the subject, so I might not be able to add much. I'll start with just summing up some of the things that have been said by the panelists, mainly my comments. They're not really government policy. But I'll start with answering first question, and then I'll address two questions that have been put while I'm closing the session. Pakistan overall is an over-legislated country. Every time that any new government has come, because legislation sells politically, we go on and we legislate more, not taking stock of what has already been legislated. A lot of executive function is performed through secondary legislation, which is in forms of directives, SROs, rules, because sometimes there are legislations, but no rules have been formed, so the legislation cannot take effect and be implemented. And same is the issue with e-tendering, because for e-tendering you do need, as rightly said, you don't need new legislation. You need execution of what is existing. And for execution, sometimes directives are more than enough. I'll give you example of European Union experience. What European Union has brought in all the European countries is the EU directives. And EU directives are secondary legislation, not primary legislation, and they are directly implemented. So once Britain goes out of EU, what they will get rid of is all EU directives, which are very cumbersome, and they have to be fully implemented. Just for example, access to building of disabled in UK, there is no law. It is through EU directives, which actually sets out in detail the ramp size, the width and height and everything else. So these things are to be done through the secondary legislation, and that is actually much more speedier, because once you talk about legislation, it's a process of a year. You go to first house, the second house, opposition, and that is a broader thing. But if you have a framework available, you can work with the secondary legislation. I think broadly speaking about the concept of today's discussion, for my mind, we need to have clarity of concept, what the two things that we're talking about. One is governance, second is accountability. First, governance in today's age is not ruling, it is service delivery. Because every, I think we should put it this way. In a democratic government, if you're not delivering, you're out. Sometimes sooner in, unstable governments, but the key is service delivery, and for that, the access to information is most important. Participation of citizens is most important. Checking if citizens are satisfied or not, if the government is in right direction or not. So that link with citizen is fundamental for the governance, and also for decision making as well, because today is an age of informed decision making. You cannot make informed decision without having the data, and data is collected through different means, and it has become easier and more transparent with use of more technology, and that is the part with governance. When we come to accountability to my mind is basically twofold. First is accountability of the decision making. So for governance, which is service delivery, whatever government does, if it is being implemented rightly or not, that is the accountability that comes through the accountability of those actions. And the fundamental tool that in modern democracy that we have is right to information. Because just think of democracy, the concept when it started, it was supposed to be a citizen government, a city government, small number of people, direct participation. But look at the size of democracies now. Look at US, look at many European countries, look at India, size of it, or Pakistan, more than 200 million people. So how would that participation would come through? And I think that issue, to some extent, not fully, to some extent has been resolved by use of technology, and that technology is the participatory citizenship, where the citizen is directly giving his feedback. And in today's age of social media, the feedback comes within half an hour. So we don't have to wait much. An executive takes a decision, a legislature takes an action, we get to know within half an hour if we have messed it up or we've done it right, if the execution on ground is happening or not happening. So the things have changed. It has downside as well, I must inform you, because most of the time, governments like, not just Pakistan, I see it in India happening all the time, most of the time we are firefighting. We are not really setting an agenda and saying, let's go and execute this for 5 years and then we will be answerable for an end product. It's not about end product. The downside of technology is we get judged on daily basis. So that's the downside. Now, the second part of accountability, which is more of my subject, rest is just an academic exercise for me, that is the accountability of wrongdoing. Now, if in that form of or system of governance, the government officials, public officials, or anyone else who has a stake commits an act of wrongdoing, then there has to be accountability of that. And within that, the use of technology, digitization of your system, and right to information is far most fundamental. There is a right to information of citizens, and there is right to information for investigators as well, because within the government departments there are different power tussles going on. Whereas, for example, if as an investigating financial investigator I need access to your or anyone's financial data, there are laws in place that stop me getting that. So to qualify to actually get something, I have to qualify on certain standards that I need this information because this person is required for this and that. And digitization of all that data, which is your NADRA data, which is your banking data, which is your taxation data, and other things, that is actually what is needed for that process of accountability of wrongdoing. So it's an overall picture, and of course it all has some serious issues as well, as we do not have I would not say we do not have a law for data protection. I would say we do not have a fully awareness of what data protection is, and when we give our data to or we submit our data for a specific purpose, is there a sensibility or awareness that how that data can be used and where it can be used? For example, just imagine, forget about the law enforcement for time being, taking pictures. It's so common, and if you tell someone I don't want the picture to be taken, this concept is alien. But how your picture can be used, for example, if I'm walking on a street and someone making a video, I'm sitting in a restaurant, someone making a video. As a public official, you can't say much because then this comes about, okay, you're not very transparent. But at the same time, videos get made, pictures get taken, and they're used for the same sort of sense of accountability, but then there is no accountability of that process of accountability, which I think one of the panelists referred to. So I think one job of the government, or any government, not just this one, is to strike a balance, because it's protection of right of a society, a group, versus protection of individual rights as well. So there has to be that balance, and I think that would come with time and with practice and with some abuses as well, as they will be highlighted. I had just some very brief comments that I wrote about some of the presentations of the panelists. There is a lot that I think law puts in place to say that has to be accessible, but while I think a Aftab sir was talking about the right information about salaries, and I was just thinking, in which country you get to know salary of a public official and perks and privileges? Because this is a question which only can be asked when you send someone a marriage proposal. Other than that, I don't think someone gets to know anyone's salary. And there's actually a very interesting case as well. A few years ago, right to information petition was filed in Lahore High Court, where the Honorable Chief Justice of that time was asked to disclose his salary, perks and privileges. And in that decision, the Chief Justice said that there is no such right to disclose this. However, I will do it voluntarily. So in a sense, that yes, he disclosed his individual perks and privileges and salaries, but he also held at the same time that as per law, there is no law that makes us do that. One of my personal experience on right to information is I have worked on both sides. I've been in civil society, worked on actually right to information, seeking information, and being in the government as well. Once you're in this job, I would like to hide information. But once you're in my previous job or in any civil society job where you need information, this is something that I'm most worried about. So therefore, I think this side will try to do what they're trying to do, but as a citizen, you must use your right to information. And that's what brings in accountability. Back in the day when I was working on some war on terror related human rights practice, we had a conference where an Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs official was there, and he, in an informal discussion, he said to me, yes, as government, we always try to stop to give information. But what we are worried every day is that what if you are successful one day and you get that information and you make us accountable? So using all these tools are important for enforcement of your rights, your fundamental rights. Because governments will become stronger and stronger, and how you can make them less stronger versus citizen is by having accountability, and that is not possible without information. It's same thing. As government needs to implement something, they need to have data, they need to have information so they can make informative decisions. Similarly, if citizen wants to make governments accountable, you need to have information, and you can't make, if you file a petition in courts for enforcement of your fundamental rights based upon information which is not correct, you will lose. So you need to have information, and the right to information gives you access to that information. I think there was a comment made about the culture of proxy not actually enforcing what is to be enforced in right to information. Yes, of course, it's a cultural, it's a culture. It's the opening up it's a process which requires education and also mentioned political will. Political will for openness would also be there, always be there, because I think almost all political parties have become aware of the strength of social media and media itself. So I don't think there is lack of political will in a sense that people would like to, or political governments would like to hide things, because when we have to decide sitting internally if something is to be made public or not, the political side is always to make it public, because it's very basic common sense. If you make something public, it's your narrative that goes in. If you are caught in the act, it's the other narrative. You know, whatever they are saying, it could be half true, but if you are not very forthcoming, so therefore this is the concept. What comes out is, first of all, you put something on your website, governments, ministries, departments, you issue a press release, and that's your narrative. And then you have set out, and unless you're not lying, that is what the truth is, because you are the authority on that particular part of information that you're rolling out. And that actually curtails any fake news that could go around. But if, for example, if some ministry or government is quiet on something and there is no information, no narrative, then of course there would be speculation or then fake news as well. I think there was a comment about gender-based divide on technology. Yes, I agree. It's not just on technology or digitalization. It's on all walks of life. But I think if you look at it from the other way, this also empower women to actually be more active because it has less interaction, and by having just the use of technology, you can be more participatory. So there are two ways of looking at it, but there is an overall issue of how to use this, and that is not just about this segment, but it's overall issue in our society as well and practice. I will not take too much of time. Thank you very much for having me here. And sorry, I wanted to answer two questions and make one disclosure as access to information. I will not be able to talk to media because I have to rush to another meeting because I saw they were actually gunning for me. Two questions. Citizen portal. I was going to mention two things. Citizen portal is basically what it brings for our government. It is the citizen participatory, because you have access, you are actually giving feedback directly to the Prime Minister's office, who is then directing, or the office is then directing, actually on district level, as you mentioned, the Badin as well. And that actually puts a huge check on the bureaucracy down under. Of course, there is 18th Amendment, and we do not have our government in all provinces, so sometimes we have an issue, but we keep hammering on. And that actually, the worst thing that any civil servant is worried about is ACR. So if he's not performing, and if there are like 2, 3, 4, 5 unresolved complaints about any district administrator, DPO, or anyone, he is extremely worried about that, because then the officer who has to write that, actually then his ACR actually reflects the same issue as well. So it's experimental, and so far our experiment actually has been quite good, and we're learning from the experience as well, because we actually sometimes issue is fed into system as being resolved, but then there is a feedback from the person as well, again on the portal, which actually makes us send back that, and this back and forth really puts the process of accountability as well. There was a comment about self-reliance. I look at differently, and I think Prime Minister is on record saying that we do not want aid, we want partnership. So I think the concept is very clear with Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf government. But we cannot live in today's age in silos. All international partners are actually helping and assisting us. It's not that we are asking them for money or expertise, and it's not that they're really dying to help Pakistan out. It's a process. We are living in a globalized village society where distances do not matter. We're part of a global community. Just imagine if we were completely secluded, then it means the people who come here and work with us will not be able to see the society and the pluses of this, because then if you're a closed society, then every sort of thing get to be said about you as well. Cabinet minute confidentiality, it's a serious issue, but unfortunately it is in law that cabinet minutes are secret, and the law. Even the decisions in the rules of business.
Sir,
No,
can you let him finish, please?
decisions are announced, but I would refer you to the rules of business. Please listen to me. So far, nothing is secret, because when we are sitting in cabinet, TV पे टिकर चल रहे होते हैं अंदर क्या बातें हो रही हैं. So I don't think there is any secrecy left. So conceptually, I think maybe it shouldn't be secret. But so far as the law stands, it actually clearly says the minutes and everything, the decision, whatever is announced, that is a media briefing of what cabinet has decided. And then what is public is basically what the cabinet division writes to the concerned ministerial division, what the decision is. But the cabinet papers themselves are confidential. Now that is a problem. And I agree with you that why that is a problem. Because, for example, the law also says that the cabinet decisions, discussions cannot be brought into question in a court of law. Whereas if, for example, someone needs to see what is the logic of one decision taken. So, for example, if the decision is not recorded properly, whereas discussion was something else, that gets recorded in cabinet meetings, that becomes a problem, because then the question is, if you do not have access to that, then can that be challenged in court, and you can reach to a conclusion if the decision was taken was a judicious decision or not. So this is something which actually we are also very concerned as a government. Prime Minister has said that we need to look into this rule, that why this is confidential, because anyways everything gets leaked. So this is something, yes, but it is in the law so far. So, but anyways, thank you very much, and I think I learned a lot from today's discussion.
Shahzad, thank you so much for being with us here today. But before we leave, we'll request Dr. Abid Saleri, the Executive Director of Sustainable Development Policy Institute, to present you the anthology of STC. Dr. Saab, if you can please come forward for a second.
So that's a transformation we are actually experiencing right now. Usage per user across the region, again, America leading, but Asia and other countries are actually, having the same number of usage, approximately around 10 to 5 GBs to 10 GBs to 15 GBs per month. And most of that data which we interact is the visual content, mostly the videos and the, I was looking at the figures that, amount of the video content regulated by PAMRA versus amount of data which was uploaded on TikTok platforms or YouTube. So there is no proportion at all. So we have one, the purpose of analysis was to basically see that on one side we have the regulatory bodies to look into what visual content has been published and access, and on the other side there's a free space where users can upload their and interact the data of their choice. And then IoTs, in fact, we have seen autonomous cars with a lot of loaded sensors, and I was trying to get some real numbers, but this is all I got was approximately, and the numbers are approximately around this range. That one car basically generates around 4,000 GBs of data per day. That's from all the sensors, visuals, cameras, and everything which is loaded on the car. So this is kind of a data-fied world. We are actually will see a lot more connected devices and a lot of more, devices which can respond to certain. It actually shocked me a couple of months ago when they announced that they are successful in it. That Elon Musk has basically is actually working. So the idea is basically to provide a coverage to every inch of the earth. Put a request to FCC for another 30,000 satellites. So in all, by speed is 50 times faster than the fiber, in fact, right? Because and the most favorite regime for regulate the carriers and